Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavaditam Astu Mahavidvishavahi. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, for the sake of those who are listening and not physically present here, we can expand on what this means. So it's a prayer to say, may that universal source protect us all. It's actually a prayer, student-teacher prayer. Protect means, in learning, we need to protect an environment. And we need all the knowledge that we have gathered and all the experience that we've gathered, we need that protected in our memory. And the Lord is the protector of our memory. And then may He nourish us all. If you deprive yourself of any nourishment, then thinking becomes very difficult, almost impossible. The thinking becomes less clear, confused. Starvation will do that. And then, if we say, may we work together. May we work together also with great vigor and enthusiasm. May it be a lively learning process, and may we be stronger as a result of it. And then generally also, may our study that we are doing also be vigorous, and may it be effective as well. In other words, may it not just be something that is intellectual gymnastics, something to do with principles only, intellectually satisfying, but something that we go away and practice. Without the practice, the principle has very little value. And practicing without the principles is also difficult, but the more important section is to practice what we learn, put it into effect, understanding that the only real evidence we have is direct experience. Direct experience is proof in any sphere, in any sector. Even in the scientific sector, if you say proof, the word is avoided. We have evidence. Well, what is proof? Well, I went and myself saw it. And you can repeat it, and you can also see it. And so, in Swami Vivekananda's series on Raja Yoga, Science of Religion, he describes it, that he's trying to bring up a method or describe religion can follow the same methodology as science. Namely, that there's some credible source or authority that we find in the scripture. Namely, that we can experiment, do the experiment ourselves. And most importantly, that we come to the same conclusion or otherwise, ourselves, without taking anything else, or anybody else's word for it. Ourselves repeat it. And then may we not mutually dispute. Very often in study, the ego takes on a characteristic of its own and we become combative. I know this, is it that, and we become arguing about, taking a famous example from the Middle Ages in Christianity, I'm arguing about the theology of how many angels fit on the head of a pin. So we could cavil about that until doomsday and not really get anywhere. So this is the prayer. But I want to say another prayer as well, taken from Upanishad, and that is highlighting what we are about to talk on from this Bhagavad Gita. So, asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyoti gamaya, virtue amritam gamaya. Lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from death to immortality. We bear that in mind as we're studying this. So last week, we covered a few things. We were up to the 9th stanza, just to remind you, refresh your memories what it was. So it went off, Machita Madgata Prana, with their minds fixed on me and with their life absorbed in me, says Krishna, enlightening each other and ever speaking of me, they are contented and delighted, and we expanded on that. There's a Christian prayer which says, included phrase is there, thy kingdom come. Well, for us, how is it that thy kingdom is not coming? And where is the kingdom? The kingdom of heaven is within you, said Jesus. Why isn't it coming? Well, because it's already there, but to access that, of course, we need to let go of the kingdom that we have. And so we can look at things from three particular points of view, general points of view. We can look at things from the physical point of view. We are currently celebrating Ganesh Chaturthi, that is celebration of Ganesh for a few days, 10 days or so. And there's a great symbolism within it. And so if we worship this form of Ganesha, unfamiliar in the Western world largely, except just as a figure, not understanding the deeper meaning of it. You see, Ganesha loves sweet things, laddu and so on, round balls of sweet, delicious sweet meat. And so those who are looking at that may think how delicious. Their minds are on a physical level, and they may be worshipping for some abundance. They may be looking at the pot belly and licking their lips at the sweet. But you see, the significance of the sweet is the sweetness of the divine that those people on a spiritual level will be looking toward. Those people on an intellectual level will be wanting, maybe inspired by the head of the figure. So some will be inspired by the pot belly, signifying abundance, some by the head, signifying learning and intellectual acumen. Some will find their pleasure in culture and art. Some will find their pleasure in endlessly thinking and analyzing, in mathematical pursuits, in computer science and so on. All of these areas, people want information and knowledge. This is the information age. People are looking for it. And so some may worship with that idea in mind. But then another category of devotee will take the totality of what they see. And they may see the significance in it. Just to highlight, you see, if you say, even historically, going back to the Rig Veda, you'll come across maybe this Gananam, Ganapati,
Ganapatihim Havamahi.
That's it, Ganapatihim Havamahi. So, but this is in reference really, interestingly enough, to an entity that shines. It's said to come from Brahaspati or Vachaspati, a word. And so what I point out, particularly to children, is, if you look at the Devanagari, Om, you may find an ear, you may find a trunk, you may find a pot belly, you may find a half a tooth. All of that you may find. So somebody was inspired to see the deep significance of this and see how the elephant head could be some combination, you see, of Gaja, elephant, Ga, signifying Gati, a goal, and then Ja, Janma, some movement toward that goal in life. And so if that's what it signifies to you, then you'll get much more value from it. It's the same in anything in life. So if you only have your mind and your attention fixed on the material, on the physical, on this world, on this abundance, on your immediate needs, on your domestic fulfillments, then that's what you'll get from it. But it won't be fully satisfying. You won't get the joy. So thy kingdom come, why aren't we getting it? Because we can't let go of the kingdom that we already possessed. And thy will be done. Well, why don't we find the flow, constant flow of grace coming through? It's because we're holding on to a sense of I. You need to let that go. So these different levels are there. If you want to put it into the yogic language, you'll find that energy is being dispersed on the physical level all over, symbolized in yogic language as Ida, Pingala. And when we take that and gather it in, Pratyahara, and when we dharana, concentrate and put it into a different avenue, different channel, we find an opening occurs. And we find that opening progressively goes. It's no good making an urgent revolution of it. If you discover God today, you'll have a military coup against him tomorrow. It's much better to approach in a stylized, progressive way, something that suits you. And it may go from the physical to the intellectual to the spiritual. That's how it might go. Invariably, for most people, it goes something like that. Until they find that with each progression, with each opening, they find greater and greater joy. And then compared to any of the other joys that they were pursuing, it overrides that the whole being gets saturated with an unspeakable joy. And so these different levels we can describe for learning purposes as 5 Ds. We first have to make a decision about it. See, in some religions they call it repentance. And I never understood that because somebody once said to me, but I never did the penance, never mind the repentance. But repentance, so taking stock and then seeing, all right, how can we now develop a certain decision about this, that I'll change the course of life. Having made a solid decision based on solid grounds, that I'm not getting the fulfillment in what I'm doing now. The formula I'm using isn't working. Please give me, followed by a bracketed, I don't have, is +1, -1, I'm not getting anywhere, except frustration. And then that, having made that decision, we then go to discrimination or discernment, finding out what has real value and what doesn't. In the jnani language, what has reality and not reality, in the prayer that we just said, what is real, what is unreal, what is darkness, what is light, what actually is mortal, what is immortal. And we aspire to all of that, knowing or unknowingly. We want to know what is the truth. We don't want to be put into misery of darkness. We want light. The great revolution for man was the discovery of light. It changed his diet. It changed his activity. It changed his storytelling. It stimulated his creativity and imagination. The discovery of fire was a miraculous, wonderful, wonderful event historically for man. And we have simply made it a sophisticated thing. And we're giving a talk under lights. We're taking the electricity instead of the fire, inherent and potentially there in sticks, got out through friction, and wonder how that works. We now, mindlessly, without any particular attention, casually we put a switch on and we expect the result. Not knowing the wonderful sequence of events that was necessary. The fact that in the electromagnetic system or electromagnetic field there had to be some permitting agency called this field that permitted electrons to exist, and a technology that would tune into that and funnel it into a light bulb, if you like, a tuning process. We can do it with light, we can do it with heat, we can do it with a number of different things. It depends on what instrument you use to catch it. Even if you catch it, then of course those waves have to travel, and those waves have to be interpreted, first of all, messaged by the ear, which is designed to be something like a loudspeaker and amplify the sounds. And then the vibration of it is caught and interpreted by a brain, and memory says it is this, cognition is there. A whole series of complex events are required. But we take it all for granted. So discrimination is necessary. The next one is desire. We have a strong desire for what we want. A yearning is what is necessary. A yearning heart is necessary. And then we have to have determination to carry it through and dedication to do it on a regular basis. And so it says, with their minds fixed on me, with their life absorbed in me completely, with no other interest there, with everything seen with a certain reinterpretation, reevaluation of what's in front of us, and enlightening each other, spontaneously doing it. Ever speaking of me, they are contented and delighted. Who doesn't want to be content? Who does not want this delightful joy? So we may add another one to make it 6 and put it as delight. So if you want to think of 6 Ds there, then that's easy for learning. So that was number 9, and we covered it last week, so just the background now. So we move to number 10, which has some unique phrases in it. So now a question arises: how does the Lord respond to these particular devotional activities, or taking the attention and steering it in a dedicated way what will it yield for us? We already had the implication there, not the implication, but directly told, that we got contentment and we got delight. But how does that work? We have to be careful. If we want to extract honey from a beehive, we have to be extremely careful, particularly if it's a wild beehive hanging in a tree or a cave or something. There are people who are prepared to do that and do it on a regular basis and seem to be immune to being stung. But certainly shouting at it won't work, expecting the honey, and waving your fist at it won't work. But approaching it with a certain strategic element in it, a certain plan involved, cautiously doing it, step by step, in order to get the honey. And so the honey is that which flows. We can imagine now that the jiva or the soul, its relationship to the Supreme, will be a mechanism whereby we tap the sweetness. And we can do it in 3 different phases. We can do it in a dualistic way, expecting to enjoy the honey that flows, dedicating ourselves to a separate entity, or we can feel a connectedness with it, or we can feel one with it. And ultimately, all of these are seen as progressive steps toward the one thing. So there's an assurance in the next stanza. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tatami yuputi yogam tam yena mam upayantite. To them, that is, Tesham, to them who are satata yuktanam. Yuktanam, yukta, means the same thing as yoga. All along, in about 80 places in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna has mentioned this word yoga. But now, for some reason or other, he says yukta and joins it with this beautiful phrase, this meaning ever steadfast in the pursuit and practice of this mystic union, which we call yoga. Constantly being in a state of mind that is tuned in to this divine entity. And what do we get as a reward? So to them, ever devout, worshipping me with love, I give this yoga of discrimination. Where do we get this viveka, this discernment that we're talking about? We get this by this devoutness, this worship with love, on the basis that that entity is lovable, as mentioned before. And so this discrimination is given to us actually as a gift. And this comes by which they come to me. This is by which they come to me. But it's not just discernment. This buddhi yoga, as it's called, this particular type, has much more meaning. We are always looking for enlightenment. You know, when we light a lamp, we can simply do it in the same way as a light switch. We mindlessly just strike a match or light a lighter. I used to be against using a flint lighter. I used to, at one point, insist we should do the matches, because it's a replay of how people laboriously rubbed sticks together and got the fire from it. The match has this catalyst there, it has sulfur on the end of it, so you can easily make it catch fire. But it's an opportunity then to strike it. Of course now convenience has taken place, so it's just a flint. But still, we can still see how the fire is there. And seemingly, because it wasn't there previously, visibly it wasn't there, and now all of a sudden it's there. Just a little friction produced it. It must have been a wonderful wonder to those people who first saw fire, whether it was from a lightning strike or whether they scientifically discovered it or whatever it was. It was a precious thing, so precious that communities would take it, preserve it, and carry it from place to place if they were of the nomadic type. Somebody's job was there to carry the embers along with them. And so we find this is evidence of the antiquity, really, of the Vedas. How Agni, fire, is so dominantly worshipped. The opening stanzas of the Rig Veda are to Agni, fire. So there's a Buddhi Yoga now that is described in these two stanzas, 10 and 11, emphasizing this light. Remember? Tamaso ma jyoti gamaya. See, lead us from darkness to light. It is light. What light? The enlightenment of the intellect. The intellect has no light of its own. The intellect has borrowed light. So, we find that all religions, all philosophical systems, all intellectual learning systems would want us to be enlightened in some way or other, either academically or in a discovery sense. But here what we mean is our condition of the mind is often cloudy, more often than not. And to give us this clarity of vision through this light that comes is a wonderful gift. There's a commentary here worth reading. On trial, sugar is found to taste sweet when we taste it. Thought is then bestowed to make varieties of sweet things. And this is the Buddhi Yoga pertaining to sugar. The glory of the divine begins to dawn in the mind of the spiritual aspirant who devoutly and persistently practices yoga. Of course, by yoga, you have to make sure that by now we understand that it's not standing on your head or somebody else's hand. That's not yoga in this context. This initial experience gives impetus for further pursuit of yoga, leading to greater cognition of divine glory. This is the Buddhi Yoga, endowed with which the spiritual practitioner gets to know more, and yet more, of the sweet sublimity of the Lord, and be ardently drawn to Him. Devotion does this way. Wax with Buddhi Yoga. Sri Ramakrishna has this to say. A man confined within a dark room contacts a ray of light coming in through a tiny aperture. He gathers knowledge of light to that extent, but as the aperture increases in size, his conception of light widens. A man in the broad daylight has his own view of light. Similar to this, God reveals Himself in varying degrees and aspects according to the nature and attainments of His devotees. Some people say, I don't want it, in which case they won't get it. You know, all of these verses are worthy of reflection. Because when we talk about the light that is reflected in the intellect, it immediately leads us to think of the light that is reflected, say, in the light bulb here, in the ceiling, or is reflected in all the things that shine. In a sense, all the particles of the universe shine. That means can be detected. If you want to count the number of particles in the entire universe, there's a simple calculation. It starts off with an investigation into a small area never before seen to have any activity or any objects contained within it. A very powerful telescope. Now there are much more powerful telescopes, but this was called Hubble telescope. And with a deep field vision, will catch the movement over a period of time in a small postage stamp area in the sky. And register, initially maybe a few stars, but mainly empty space. And ultimately registering billions and billions, or the inference of billions and billions, certainly hundreds of thousands of bright shining objects. And on investigation we find these are not the objects that we thought they were many hundreds of years ago. We don't even have to go hundreds of years ago. All we have to do is go to the beginning of the century, and people thought that all the bright objects in the sky were just different stars within our own galaxy. Then as we investigate, we discover, oh, every shining thing is not a star, it's another galaxy. And galaxies themselves come in clusters. We're thinking, you see, when we consider Ganapati, see, Gana, groups. So it's a lot of groups, and everything comes in groups and clusters. Everything, fortunately, is grouped together like a jigsaw puzzle, all codependent and working rhythmically. And so there's no such thing as a galaxy by itself, it comes in a cluster. Then you can calculate from that small postage stamp area, which is something like 1/20th of a million of the observable sky, and understanding everything seems to be equal in every direction. And then we can calculate that there are something like 10 to the power of 80 particles in the universe. That means if you take a foolscap page like this size, you'll be filling them with noughts. It's incredible and amazing that there are something like 200 million galaxies. And within that, each galaxy will have about 100 billion stars. 200 billion, 100 billion stars in each, and that's only within our field of observation. And even that is not within our field of observation, it's our calculation. You look up into the sky, you won't see it. You require a special telescope. We are looking at this world through the telescope of the mind. We can look through the telescope, we can look at the telescope, and we can also look away from the telescope. We have an inherent freedom to do all of that. On the basis that we are the observer of it. The Bhagavad Gita tells us the same thing as the Bhagavad Gita, in that things are wetted and things are blown away by the wind and things are set alight and all these things. But I'm the witness of all of that. It goes directly to it. I am that witness, that thing that I am seeking. So each one of these passages is worthy of as a process of study. Study means there's a system whereby what you're hearing now is listening to this. And listening to it with a certain rationale, a certain reasoning, a certain intellectual appreciation, that you can go away and think about it a little bit and contemplate it. Listening, contemplating. And then finally meditating in such a way that it leads you to blissful bliss. And so when we come across this, I was tempted even this evening, you see, we have these divine glories which are there. And if there were sufficient people, we would have said, let's chant this together, the divine glories. Because in this divine glories, translated into English to a kind of Gregorian chant style, you can pick up what is about to occur, because there's a request. Let me know all your glories now. We'll come across that now. And what's the reason for that? So I can contemplate them. And in contemplating them, find an easier route for this opening process. And so I had a discussion with somebody the other day. I said, no, it's a very easy process. Oh no, it's a struggle, it's very difficult. No, when you understand that there are all these beautiful signposts all around you, that the inherent beauty everywhere in the whole of nature can be picked up in different scenes, with different descriptions and qualities. And these can all lead you back. These are all aspects of glory of the one entity. And so this becomes our conclusion. So, He's shining, everything shines, is a passage. Tameva bantam anubhati sarvam idam vibhati. He's shining, all these things shine. Through His lustre, all these are variously illumined. So when we talk of this buddhi yoga, this opening up, this light, this internal light that we call the thinking, when we shed light on a subject, you see we use that terminology, we shed light on it. We think of the intellect as a kind of internal lamp. And when we steer our attention onto an object, it gives us information and truth about the object in front of us. And when we turn that internally, what we find, the original light is there, the original lamp is there. So the next stanza tells us this. Tesham evam nukampartam aham ajnanacham tamaha nashayam ya atma bhavastu yanadipina bhasvata. Out of pure compassion, every religion says God is love. Out of pure compassion for them, who? Those dwelling in darkness, vast majority of creatures, living in the shadow of ignorance, dwelling out of compassion for them, dwelling in their hearts. Where is that Lord? Every masterful teacher tells the same thing. Where is God? There was somebody's grandchild, a devotee's grandchild. They were about 4 or 5 years of age. And I said, so where is Bhagavan? They loved Krishna. I said, where is Krishna? And immediately the 4-year-old went like this, the heart, immediately. But unfortunately, by the age of 11 now, I asked again, and the child somehow pointed upstairs somewhere. So, see, other children have told this and so on and so forth, and get away from that. But the original child impulse was there. Maybe they were taught that. But that's the fact of it. It's there as a special place. And this heart itself is the buddhi. This is the intellect. This is the sitting room of the Lord. In meditation, what do? We construct the sitting room of the Lord in our imagination. We feel its presence internally. And we think of it in the center of the person. We colloquially call it the heart. The heart of everything, the core of the person. And then what's the next? Inviting the Lord to take his seat. We sit patiently until the Lord comes and graces us with his glory and presence and sits there. We can easily think of that. The mind is God's sitting room. And where is that? That's internally, dwelling in their hearts, in the very core. I destroy the ignorance-born darkness, we might add from within, by what? The luminous lamp of wisdom. This buddhi yoga is the subject. The Lord's choosing to reside in the hearts of beings is his compassion. Because of his presence as conscience. There was a question asked on one talk somewhere. How do we know what is right and what is wrong? And the reply was, we have some kind of internal conscience. But you see, what we know as right and wrong comes from this spiritual awakening. As soon as the spiritual awakening occurs, we immediately spontaneously have an urge to go and be of service to somebody. It overflows. We want to feel, get people to experience this wonderful joy and glory that we ourselves are experiencing, not out of a sense of conversion or a sense of changing, but simply a spontaneous urge. It's a kind of cosmic dance where we see the divinity everywhere in every movement, and spontaneously we want to take part in it. So real spirit of service, real generosity of spirit, real social service in its pristine and purest sense, this is found really in the pure mind, where we find this purity of the buddhi, where we find this, and this is the greatest gift we can have, is to have this purity of this buddhi. Now the other way, of course, is cultivating morals and ethics on the basis that these are rules and regulations, And maybe the excuse we want a smooth running society and so on. The materialists will say, I believe in morals and ethics, that it was accumulated through social memory, and we learned that it was good for everybody, and that's why we're doing it. Cultural accumulative memory. The neo-atheist or neo-Darwinist Richard Dawkins would call this meme. He's coined the term meme. And you can go on like that, but at some point or other, it becomes very shallow. And then we have to arbitrate what is the best thing to do in this circumstance or that. But what I'm talking about is a spontaneous feeling of doing things which are right. So right attitude is one of the eight sections, if you like, of the Eightfold Path of Buddha. The right attitude. Do you have a right attitude toward people on the basis of the discovery of what? See, Buddha is one of enlightened buddhi, enlightened intellect, enlightened mind. And who could be more compassionate than the Buddha? So, out of pure compassion for them dwelling in their hearts, I destroy the ignorance born of darkness. Don't try and do it yourself. That light will saturate and overwhelm the darkness, just as the sun removes, as it were, the darkness of the night. We don't have to have a whole crew shifting away the darkness. The light comes on, and that's enough. The darkness goes by itself. It's not like a stage show, where they shift the rotating stage. All right, day is gone, day is coming, night has to go off. So this idea of conscience is there inherently because of the presence of this Lord in the heart. Beings are therefore prompted to seek what is good, or at least what seems good. The lamp of wisdom that the Lord lights is constituted of divine components. Discrimination functions as the container of oil. The contentment coming from bhakti is the oil. Beautiful analogous description. The flame gets put out by foul air, but this flame is fed by the pure air of meditation on Ishvara, on the principle of the highest. And prajna, or the awareness of the self, ensuing from the constant brahmacharya, serves as the wick. The heart freed from all worries and anxieties is the lamp niche. A burning lamp runs the risk of being blown out by a gust. But a mind unaffected by attachment and aversion is the best windscreen to this lamp. The unbroken consciousness of Ishvara is the flame emanating from this lamp of wisdom. And this lamp is set up in the devotee's heart. He beholds the divine presence within himself with the aid of this divine lamp. I was up there in Belfast, and somebody asked, how is it that this entity is there? In fact, the question didn't start off like that. The question started off with dolphins. And even then it didn't start there. It started off with aberration of humankind, how dolphins are better and more intelligent. And of course, we may misuse our intelligence, but the dolphin has not got the capacity to do the things that the human has, because the intellect is not there to the same degree. We find that there's a mammalian brain, there's emotion there. We find that there's a survival thing that all organisms have in common. A survival thing that reflects this substratum of existence, this understanding I exist, this existence itself being there, comes out as survivalism. And then we find the mammalian brain comes out, where we find that there is a relationship. Mammals would protect their young, and so on and so forth. Animals would do that. There'll be that relationship. There'll be a genetic love. But then when it comes to mankind, there are many examples that we can see throughout history of outstanding people who did something not in order to survive, not in order to do any other thing, not in order to develop a personal, individual, family relationship or domestic harmony or any of these things. If you take a man like Jesus, he would have been a failure if you use this criteria that he was interested in surviving and that he was interested in passing on the genetic line. Because as far as we can tell, he was a renunciant. As far as we can tell, he says that some people are eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of God. Others are eunuchs for different other reasons. And wherever the ground is there, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his heads. And compares to the life that he leads, wandering about with his band of disciples. We can beautifully imagine it as a renunciant, as a wandering monk, an Eastern wandering monk, with a band of followers who drink in every single one of his words, sleeping with him by the campfire, fishing by the lakeside, sitting and listening to his words of wisdom, feeding him, attending to him with reverence, calling him Rabbi, Master, and walking in the deserts with him, and facilitating him when crowds come near. All of this we can imagine. So such a person, from an evolutionary, neo-Darwinian perspective, would be a complete failure. Not interested in survival of the fittest. Not interested in struggle. Not interested in propagating the species. Not interested in self-centeredness. None of these things. Transcending them all. And so when it comes to the level of man, it's very different. Sri Ramakrishna has this to say. The policeman patrolling at night carries a bullseye lantern with the aid of which he sees the persons loitering about. You have to understand this is now in the 19th century. But this lantern does not disclose its carrier. If he, however, turns it on himself, the others then come to know who he is. And in this way, Ishvara reveals nature and its contents, but keeps himself hidden. Nobody can see him except through his grace and compassion. That means we have to clear the way. We have to do a little struggle. And then at the last moment, the Lord reveals himself. And that revelation is the major movement. Compared to our little struggle, it's a massive, massive revelation. And so something moves now in this story. So Arjun, who represents us all, has an impulse to recount his understanding of these divine manifestations and the glory of this Krishna that stands in front of him. And so the rhythm of the stanza changes also, and Arjun, all this time Krishna has been speaking, Arjun now asks this, Arjun uvacha, param brahma param dhamma, pavitram paramam pavan, purusham shashvatam divyam, adi devam ajam vibham. So, you are the Supreme Brahman. What does that mean? You are that Supreme Absolute, beyond thought, beyond mind, beyond concepts, that Supreme Entity. Not God. That Supreme Entity, the Absolute, of which the word God or the concept of God is the nearest human thought can get to it. The Supreme Abode. When we look, where would we want to settle down? Where do we want to sit and stay? Where will this kingdom of heaven be? I am that supreme abode. And supreme purifier, because when we move toward that, the Lord then purifies and clarifies our mind. The light of the divine light within us, that Jyoti, that inner light, itself clarifies, enlightens, makes the crooked path straight, shows us everything. It all becomes instantaneously clear to us. The eternal, not bound by any time. therefore not bound by any causation. Divine Purusha, that person, Purusha in the sense, that person who actually is not just that Supreme, but is manifest everywhere as a cosmic person. Yesterday we were doing a Ganesh Puja and Swami Vimokshananda here repeated the Purusha Suktam, telling us about the cosmic person of the mind, of the universe, how this whole universe is a divine cosmic body. The primeval deity. There are other deity means, you see, we have to be careful about an English translation. When we say Divyam or Deva or any of these terms, we're meaning something that shines. It's easy to see things that shine. The sun shines, the moon shines, stars shine, galaxies shine. Quasars shine more than anything else. So these are all shining things. And we may find that there are governing aspects and laws that make things shine. But the original thing that makes everything shine, that primeval entity, that is say, tameva pantam anupati sarvam idam vibhati, that kind of thing, that everything shines. He's shining, all things shine. The unborn and the omnipresent. Seeing all this, we find a kind of feeling of being overwhelmed. Param Brahman, Brahman is the Supreme Brahman, Nirguna, pure consciousness, as opposed to Apara Brahman is Ashvara or Saguna Brahman, with quality. All of these things is He. And then the substratum, all of that is He. And then not only do I see this, but I'm simply endorsing everything that has been said about you previously by others. So, ahustam rishaya sarve devashye naradas tata asito devalo vyasaha swayam chaiva bravisi me. All the riches, all the sages, all the ancient enlightened people of the past have thus acclaimed you as also Deva Rishi Narada, who's a supreme devotee, and also Asita, Deva, Vyasa, all of these supreme and well-known great rishis who have seen directly this truth. And now he says, you yourself say it to me. All of this. And then he says, I believe you. So he goes on, Sarvam etad dhritam manye yanmam vadasi keshava nahite bhavan vyaktim vido deva na danavaha. I hold as true all that you say to me, O Keshava. Neither these shining ones, these devas, all these structures of beings, nor the Danavas, that's the Asuras, O Lord, know truly your manifestation. They're all ignorant of it. They're ignorant of it because he himself is that manifestation. And Sri Ramakrishna says, the sun is immensely greater than the earth, but because of the distance it appears as a small disk. In this way, Ishvara's attributes are infinite. We shouldn't quarrel, or is this or is that not infinite. But we know very little of him. Because, why? Because of our ignorance. And so the Lord really is the origin of everything. And so who's the person who really knows him? A wonderful statement here. You yourself know yourself by yourself. How else can anybody know you? So it goes like this. Swayameva tvanam veta tvam purushottama bhuta bhavana putesha deva deva jagatpate. So Truly, you alone know yourself by yourself, O Purushottama, Supreme Purusha, O Source of beings, O Lord of beings, O God of gods, O ruler of the world. And then he's asking in the next passage, which you leave off there, condescend to tell without reserve of your divine glories, by which glories you remain, pervading all these worlds. And now from there on we come to highly meditative sections. Because we can take any one of these. He's like, please tell me your glories so that I can reflect on them. Some people ask, in meditation, I ran out of things to think of. Well, there's a whole list of things here. You can pick up anything, even from what we've studied and read. We're present in the heart of all, enlightening your intellect. I have a sitting room here in the cave of the heart. You can welcome me, sit me there, and decorate me, enthrone me, garland me, talk to me, pray to me, praise me, love me, integrate with me, and knowing that you are pure consciousness. And then take another example like that. So this chapter, Vibhuti Yoga, is extremely profound in this way and brings out some unique things. Some of these things, of course, will be referred to some mythology, but we can easily analyze that. For example, you are Vishnu among the Adityas is mentioned. That is, Adityas, when you think about it, Adityas refers to time and space actually. All the signs of the zodiac, 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 12 months of the year, whichever way you want to look at it, represents to us time. Wherever you look, if you think that you have a calendar and events are going on in a certain progression on a certain date, understand that it is the all-pervading entity that pervades throughout time, Vishnu, the one of long strides, who covers all the worlds and covers all the worlds and all their time zones. So in this way, we have every opportunity to pick up these passages in a meditative way. But we'll leave this off till next week. So, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.